Hi, everybody. It's episode 429 of PodQuest.
Hey.
It's Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. I am Chris. With me is Drootin.
Hello.
And Walnut.
Hi, I'm here, yes.
Man, I just noticed how dark it is already.
Yeah, it's dark.
I feel like last week it was still actually kind of light at this point. Like it's 6:22.
It was a little bit brighter at this point last week, but like probably not by much. But yeah, it's I feel like I should be turning on my ring light, but I'm not streaming, so I'm not blinding myself with that thing.
I mean, it probably shouldn't blind you to begin with.
It doesn't blind me. I mean, I have to turn it almost all the way down. It is super bright. But I think that might be part of a reason why I might have burst a blood vessel in my eye, just because I was staring at that for so long.
Yeah, you should try not to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it actually, it helps having it on, because right now I'm just looking at a blank screen, like, not a blank screen, but a white screen, that if I have that, it actually distributes the light and actually works better with my eyes. But it's nice, but it's dark.
Yeah. So before we jump into things, Rich, before we started recording, you mentioned a thing about desert island movies, and you named one of them.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, what are your others?
I don't fucking remember. That recording of Brose was late August.
So
probably.
2 months ago?
Yeah.
And you don't remember what 5 movies you picked?
No, I don't.
Then they couldn't have been that important.
I mean, that was the thing that was part of the, like, at the time, that exercise, like, I never really, that's not really a thing I ever really think of, is my desert island, whatever. Like, we did all of the categories: movies, books, games, TV, I guess TV. Did we do TV shows? I don't think we did. Albums, things like that. And, like, my interests and my points change all the time. There are a few that I will always remember. Like, one of the ones I listed was, or the one of the top ones I listed for movies was Captain America: Winter Soldier. I was trying to get an even spread, so I tried to think of a comedy. I think it might have been either I Love You Man or Anchorman. I can't remember which one. Trying to get, like, I tried to get a spread of a bunch of different things and not just, like, all the same shit, because when you're if you're gonna get stuck on a desert island, you don't want to watch all action movies. You want to have a spread in case your mood changes. So, like, I had, like, an action, a comedy. I think I put the original Sonic movie, like the 2020 Sonic movie, on there, just because I was like, I need something a little bit lighter than the rest of them, but I can't actually remember what they all were. I think I can remember my desert island video games, though. Yeah, I can remember most of my desert island video games.
Man, this guy picking 5 movies that he could watch over and over again, then forgetting them.
I think Matrix might have been one of them as well. I can't remember. I really can't remember this.
How many Fast and Furious movies were on there?
None of them, actually. None of them.
Then your list is void. Was Captain Ron on there?
Captain Ron? I don't even know what Captain Ron is.
You don't know what Captain Ron is?
No.
Did you have any Kurt Russell movie?
No.
What are you doing with yourself?
Who's Kurt Russell again?
Jesus. God damn it, Richard.
I'm honest, though. I'm being honest. Who is Kurt Russell? I can't remember.
He's Captain Ron.
I don't know who the fuck Captain Ron is.
He's Snake Plissken?
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't have any of his movies. No, not at all. My video games were, it was Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisp. I took 2 spots to have both those games on there, because those games are beautiful and amazing. City Skylines, 7 Days to Die, and I cheated a little bit, but I wouldn't have mentioned this if I didn't actually own it. Super Mario 3D Collection, All-Star Collection. Those were my 5 choices for games. But, like, I can't remember everything else. I really can't.
I'm very disappointed.
Look!
Not a single Kurt Russell movie for your desert island list.
If you want to know my desert island list, you can go back and listen to...
We both know I'm not going to do that.
Episode 68.3 of the Brose podcast for Mayan, Tim, and Matt's desert island lists.
Nope, not going to do it.
I mean,
Cobb,
go ahead, Walnut.
If you want to know what it is, there's how you can find out what it is.
I just want to know how you managed to have a desert island movie and not have a movie about desert islands.
I might have made that comment and said Castaway is one of them, but probably not going to want to actually have that on there.
What about that? What was that really? Swiss Army Man. That was like a pseudo desert island movie.
That was before we watched that.
Was it?
No, I don't want that movie on there. Yeah. So, what was it? 68 point what? 68.3. That released on September 28th, which means we recorded it pre-September 13th. So that was before we did Swiss Army Man, I believe.
Okay. Just want to throw out there though, you should really consider watching Captain Ron. Drew, you would hate it. Like, actually, you know what? You might not, because it's actually like a silly comedy from like the 90s, so like it leans into its 90s-ness. But it's got fucking Kurt Russell as like a hired boat captain. He is hired to basically chauffeur Martin Short and his family to like Florida or something like that to sell this boat that he got like an inheritance from. They end up like stranded in Cuba for a while. They have to like escape from some guerrillas, like the militant guerrillas, not guerrilla gorillas, which is like a joke in the movie. It's real dumb good fun.
Sure.
And it's like Kurt Russell like hamming it up. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, until I've looked at the list of his movies and remembered, oh right, I was pretty certain I had never seen any movie Kurt Russell had ever been in, but I have seen two.
Which two?
Escape from LA and Escape from New York?
No, I've never seen either Escape movie. I would probably watch them, but
Escape from New York's good. The Thing is also very good.
I've never seen The Thing.
The Thing is like
no.
The Thing is like top tier John Carpenter, like early 80s horror.
Mm-hmm.
And like legitimately good horror that stands up, not like some of like the campy like Halloweens and Friday the 13th and stuff like that.
But yeah, it's Guardians 2 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
You know what? I never did see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Do you like Tarantino?
I am hit or miss on Tarantino. I really like some of his movies and don't like others. Like love Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. Fucking hated both Kill Bills though.
I can't say I really loved Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. I didn't get Pulp Fiction when I saw it, and Reservoir Dogs I thought was kind of boring at the time when I watched it, but I was like 10 or 12. And nothing happens in that movie.
Yeah, that's the point.
But yeah, I didn't understand that. But when it comes to Kill Bills, I agree. They're kind of overrated. They're not terrible.
Oh, I think they're fucking horrendous.
They're overrated for sure.
They are worse than the fucking Lord of the Rings movies as far as I'm concerned. And those are probably the movies I like least.
I mean,
at least like well-regarded movies I like least, I should say.
I would say I could agree with you that the Lord of the Rings movies are better than the Kill Bill movies, but I like the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah, no, man, those movies are garbage.
Man, you think Harry Potter movies are good.
Oh no, the Harry Potter movies are absolutely terrible, but I enjoy them anyway. The Harry Potter movies are not all that different from the Fast and Furious movies. They're absolute trash, but they're about family, and I love them.
Family. They're not really about, they're kind of about family.
No, I mean, no, but Fast and Furious is. That's why I said it.
I know.
But come on, man. Like, they're not all that different from each other if you think about it. Like, they both have flying cars.
I mean, yeah, I guess they both each have a flying car in one of their series.
Yeah, exactly.
But does a car go to space in Harry Potter?
You know what? We don't know what the Ford Angelia does after year 2 before year 5? 6? 5?
So it might go to space.
Yeah, like we don't know. It can fly on its own. It has its own it's self-aware.
Yeah.
And like you don't hear anyone talk about like, oh man, there was this fucking random car just like barreling through the Forbidden Forest. And I feel like the fucking centaurs wouldn't have stood for that anyway. They seem a little, uppity when it comes to their space.
That was, I didn't read any of the Harry Potter books, but I remember hearing, was it Deathly Hallows, where like they tried to get like a whole army together to fight against Voldemort? And like, didn't we kind of lose that in the movie? The
movies cut a lot of magical creatures.
Yeah.
Whether it was like the centaurs were a more prominent thing in book 5 when Umbridge fires Emma Thompson's character, who's I'm drawing a blank on her name, the divinations professor.
Mm-hmm.
Dumbledore lets her live in the castle still, but for that class they end up hiring one of the centaurs who is more friendly towards humans, and they don't do that in the movies at all.
Yeah.
They also, like, cut Dobby out of the fourth book, where he was, like, Dobby and there was a female house elf that were, like, major plot points. Like, Dobby is the one that helped Harry get through the second challenge, not fucking Neville.
Yeah, and Dobby, we were supposed to have more of an emotional connection to Dobby than one movie when he dies. So, that was also something that kind of made me laugh, is like the movies, they try to force this emotional scene of Dobby's death, but it's like, I mean, he was really only like 5 minutes of one movie.
Yeah, and it's one of those, like, he shows up in books 4, 5, and 6, I believe. Like, not a lot in 5 and 6, but he's fairly prominent in 4 because he starts working at the school.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also the book where Hermione does the whole, like, defense of the house elves, like, group, trying to get them, like, fair wages that they don't want and shit.
Yeah, and none of that was in the movies.
But anyway, enough of that nonsense. Rich, what is on the agenda?
Alright, so Cobb, you watched a movie called Barbarian that we're going to talk about, which I don't think I've ever heard of this movie. It might be new, I'm assuming. Me and Drew played this game that's in playtesting, or it was in playtesting. Apparently they do it like once a month or so, called Dark and Darker. It is a PvPvE dungeon crawler, battle royale. It's got a lot in it. We'll talk about that. Not only did I complete Resident Evil 7, but I also completed Resident Evil 8 and the DLC, and I have my definitive list, or my personal list, not definitive, my personal list of what I think the ranking of the Resident Evil games are that we can discuss. Cobb, you played Mario and Rabbids Spark of Hope. And yeah, that's going to be most of our show today.
Yeah. So yeah, Barbarian. It's a movie that just came out back in September, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, September 9th. It apparently actually debuted at San Diego Comic-Con. But I guess it must have had just a short theatrical release, because it happened to be on HBO Max, which it looks like HBO Max actually it went up on the 25th. So just, happy coincidence, I guess.
You can still see Barbarian at the AMC Cherry Hill at 9:30 tonight.
Yeah,
or in King of Prussia at 9:10 tonight. Yeah,
it still has a few limited showings, it seems. But it is a horror thriller that was the like under the play button synopsis, total fucking like bait and switch. They set it up where it seems like it's going to be a movie where two people end up booked at the same Airbnb, and that like maybe one of them is actually like a killer or something like that. And like the movie starts and you assume it's the guy. But then you're like thinking to yourself, it's like, no, they're probably gonna misdirect us and it's gonna be the girl. And then the whole movie fucking flips and it's neither of them, and it's not really it's not that kind of horror movie. It's like a fucking monster movie. There's literally a fucking monster that lives in tunnels under the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, really good. About 30, 40 minutes into the movie, one of the two main characters is brutally murdered. And then it just cuts to black, so you expect everyone is dead. And then it almost feels like it's about to go to credits. Like, it goes to black long enough that you expect, like, the credits to start rolling. And then it cuts to, like, this bright, sunny, like West Coast, scenic road. And one Justin Long driving in a convertible. And the movie transitions to following Justin Long, who is easily one of the most despicable fucking people I've ever seen in a movie.
I love Justin Long, so I'm already sold on this movie.
Yeah, he was great in it, in that, like, you really don't like him sort of way. And he starts out kind of like, oh, well, like, maybe, like, he's playing an actor. And he's an actor that is basically getting canceled for potentially being shitty. And you don't know. Like, it's one of those, like, you don't know if he actually did what people are accusing him of, or if it's, like, a misunderstanding, or, like, somebody trying to, like, get their name bolstered up. Because it's, like, one person, but it's, like, fucking his whole career in life. And it turns out that he's the owner of the Airbnb that people were murdered in. And he doesn't know any of this. And he ends up going to the house to sell it. And it's so fucking weird and good and not at all what I expected, and such a pleasant fucking surprise. I don't want to spoil too much about, like, what was actually going on, but it was just, we're sitting there watching it, and the girl who, like, you kind of follow at the beginning of the movie, the whole time, she is making every bad fucking decision you can make in a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she she gets to this house and there's no key. No one's answering the phone from the rental agency. And then like she knocks on the door and just like some dude answers. And she's just like, oh, well, I booked it too. So like, I'm just going to stay here with you, stranger. And the guy that's already there is Bill Skarsgård, who played Pennywise in the new It movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's part of the Skarsgård family, so
yeah,
they're all famous anyway.
Yeah, but he so like that whole stuff is going on, and then like she finds like a weird trap door thing in the basement and decides she should go into it and investigate it, and other just like weird creepy shit keeps happening. At one point, a homeless man chases her down the street and into the house, and it's like, why the fuck are you still here? Why have you not gotten into your car and fucking left? Because the movie opens up on a dark and rainy night, and she gets to this house, and like all you see is the house. The house looks nice, or like nice enough. But like the next morning when it's sunny out, the entire neighborhood is abandoned. That is the only house still standing. Everything else is either like burnt or like boarded up, and like cars on front lawns. Like the whole neighborhood is just abandoned. And she even talks to somebody that she's like in town like meeting with, who like gives her this look of like, yeah, you shouldn't stay in that neighborhood. That neighborhood is dangerous. You're going to get murdered. Mm-hmm. And she just keeps fucking staying there. Like it's one of those like, you're almost like, no, you deserve to die. Like if Bill Skarsgård is the killer, like you set yourself up for this. Like this is what happens to you. And then yeah, it fucking just turns like 180 and goes in a totally different fucking direction. And I really enjoyed it. It's probably one of the better horror movies I've seen in a long time.
That's certainly something I'm interested in. Like I said, Justin Long told me. I was trying to read up a little bit on the movie while we were talking about it. It's like the director's first directorial debut, and most of the stuff he's done, I don't recognize. But he did voice Hal Jordan in the death of in a Superman film, Life and Death of Superman or something like that.
I did not look this guy up. He's from The Whitest Kids You Know.
Oh,
so
sure.
He was in a movie. Like he was in like they were like a college like sketch comedy sort of thing. I don't know if they were on College Humor or not, but it was like that era of stuff. He was in a movie in like the late 2000s when like raunchy comedies were coming back. Like it was in that like Hangover era. I'm looking at his filmography because I forget the name. Miss March. It was called Miss March. It was a terrible fucking movie, but like terrible in a way where like you still laughed at it because it was just so fucking bad. He played a guy in it that on his graduation night gets knocked down a flight of stairs and ends up in a coma for like a decade. So like the first like third of the movie, he just keeps like uncontrollably shitting himself. And that movie came out in a time where like, I mean, we were, late teens, early 20s. And it was hilarious. Like the motherfucker, he got woken up out of his coma by his best friend beating him with a baseball bat. Like that's the sort of stupid that fucking movie was.
Yeah. I vaguely remember the title, Miss March. I never seen it. I was 20, almost 20 at the time. 19.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you would have been 20 or 19.
Well, it was 2009, which would technically make me 19, but that was 2 years after I graduated high school, and I graduated in 18, or I graduated in 07 at 18. So like, right? I'm.
It came out in March of 2000.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have quite been 20 yet, right? Or no, you would have been over 20 because you were born in 88, right?
88. So yeah, it would be almost my 21st. Yeah, I was doing math wrong. I don't know why I was doing math so bad.
But yeah, bad movie.
Yeah.
But that guy was in it, and now he's apparently directing one of the best horror movies of the year.
Yeah, it's his first time being a full-on director. He co-directed some things. It was his first directorial debut. Man,
like, what is it with, like, comedy guys being really good at horror movies? Like, look at Jordan Peele.
Mm-hmm.
Comedians are messed up, man.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like, you have to be severely broken to be legitimately funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rich, I know you don't always want to watch horror movies because you get scared. This one, not all that scary, like jump scary. Like, there's some, like, tense bits of it, but I don't think it would be like, like, you're not going to sit on your couch at night and, like, be, like, jump scared maybe more than once or twice.
With me, I just feel like horror movies are a community experience. The fun in a horror movie is watching it with somebody else and, like, playing off each other or equally getting scared and whatnot. Like, it's not that I'm too scared. Like, there are some movies that I'm just like, nah, but it's more of, like, I don't really like gore. I just think if it's too gory, I'm just like, I'm over it. But scares and stuff like that, like, I'm for.
Yeah, and movie, the only gore is, like, the one, like, the first murder. And it's just one of those, it's more visceral than gory. And then it's got some, like, gross moments, but nothing, like, over the top, if that makes sense. But, like, very good. Like, not at all what I thought when I read the synopsis. And by the time we watched it on Sunday, I think. And, like, when we watched it, like, it was literally just, I saw it on HBO Max, and I read the synopsis. I'm like, oh, this seems like it could be okay. And, like, oh, it's got Justin Long and Bill Skarsgård. Like, yeah, why not? And then, it ended up just being totally unexpectedly really good.
Yeah.
But how about, you guys played this Dark and Darker game?
Alright. So, to set, put the setting, Dark and Darker, or place the setting, Dark and Darker is a small dev game that, I believe might have been Kickstarted. I don't 100% know. But it's a small dev game where they are trying to, like, take essentially a play on Escape from Tarkov, but put it into a fantasy setting of a dungeon crawler where you can play in teams of 1 to 3, or it might have been 1 to 4. I feel like I saw teams of 4. Yeah, I only saw two things to add people as well. That it's in playtesting. Their expected release date for official, like, 1.0 would be the end of 2023, so they're a year out. Or mid Q3 2023.
I thought it said Q4.
I think it was Q3.
I'll pull up the Steam thing while you talk.
Yeah. So I played it for about 2 hours. I don't know how long Drew played it for.
Probably about the same. Maybe a little less, because for the beginning, it took me a little while to realize, the US East server just apparently is not connecting to anything.
I did East the entire time. So it might have just been at the time that you were playing. There was an issue. But, like, I was doing the Virginia server the entire time. But it is a game that certainly has legs. Like, you fight spiders. There's a lot of legs. But, like, it's got legs to stand on. It's got a good concept. It's really neat. So it's, like, it's a combination of a battle royale with a dungeon crawler, kind of maybe roguelike, but right now it seems like there's only one map.
Which, I mean, yeah, it's a battle royale, but you're gaining levels for your character, and if you escape, like in Tarkov, any equipment you get in the run, you get to keep and progress your character.
Yeah. The only thing I don't know, because I was never able to escape, is if you swap out equipment from the starting base equipment, go into a run and die, do you keep that equipment you went into with, or do you lose it and go back to your starting equipment? That's something I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's how it works in Tarkov, so it's like a balance of, like, do you want to take your stuff but risk it getting stolen if you get killed?
Yeah.
Like, but I don't know.
But this game, like, it needs some work. Me and Drew talked about it a little afterwards. One of the bigger problems with the game is there's no matchmaking, in a sense of, or not no matchmaking, no random party building as far as I can tell. So if I were to queue in, it's not like a Warzone or Apex, or if I were to queue in by myself, it would pull 2 players unless I tell it not to.
Right.
If you queue in solo, you queue in solo.
Yeah, nor do you have an option to set it to be like, only people that are queuing solo, or let me go play against groups no matter how many people are in the, like, PUBG
so
or whatever it has.
There needs to be some sort of balancing act with that, because for the 2 hours I played, I maybe got to the last ring or even near an escape portal once. The whole rest of the time was me running into groups of 2 or 3 and just getting my ass handed to me. Like, there's no run. There's no, like, sprint, or there's sprint for the fighter. But I don't know if any other
Nope.
Yeah, none of the other classes have a sprint. And it's on a cooldown. If you use sprint, you can use sprint for like 30 seconds, but then you can't use it for a little bit.
I mean, like,
And
the
so-
wizard has haste and invisibility, which can speed them up for like 2 seconds, but they
Yeah.
also have a casting time that is longer than you're invisible or hasted for, and it's like,
Yeah.
cool,
Yeah, and-
totally worth it when you're playing solo.
Yes, it's just the game is made to find people to play with and play with them, and like it is. I guess it's made to be harder because you should be bringing people with you if you're dungeon diving. But it's just like it really does need that balancing of either if you're solo queuing, you need a buff, or if you're solo queuing, you should only play with either solos or parties of 2, not parties of 3. Because I can take out a party of 2 as a fighter. I can't take out a party of 3. There's no chance I'm taking out a party of 3 as a fighter. Like it's too much. And it's like the enemies, the NPCs that you fight and encounter can be very difficult with your starting equipment. I had several instances where I was fighting things with bow and arrows alone. Like they had a bow and arrow. I had just my sword and shield. And like guarding with your shield doesn't guard. You just take less damage.
It does, but it's like direction specific. Like if you don't actually block it with the shield, just because you have your shield up doesn't mean it didn't hit you, you know?
I've taken arrows to the shield and it hurt me.
Oh, interesting.
I've taken slashes to the shield and it hurt me. So either my shield just doesn't have the proper defense capabilities because it's still the starting shield, or it just decreases the amount of damage you take and not stops you from taking damage, which, I mean, that's fine, but if you're attacking an enemy with a shield, you have to hit the enemy and not the shield.
Right.
They could be playing off of like the Uncharted mentality where your health isn't really your health, it's your luck. And every time you get hit, it's just your luck is going down until eventually somebody actually guts you.
I mean, sure, but
yeah.
But like, so I played basically every other class except the Barbarian. There's Fighter, Barbarian, Ranger, Rogue, Cleric, and Wizard.
Paladin. But was there Wizard?
No.
Yeah. There's Wizard, no Paladin, you're right.
Yeah, it's Cleric, not a Paladin. And
yeah.
The other thing I think it needs is like a tutorial area, because boy, it was confusing playing the Cleric and not understanding how to cast my spell, and that I needed to put on the secondary weapon, the Wizard Staff, to be able to cast the spell, which was dumb.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't figure out how to dual wield. Apparently you can dual wield in that game.
Oh,
and the fighter gets an ability where if you have two weapon in each hand, you attack like 5% faster or whatever. And I used that for a couple of rounds. And every time I got a second weapon, I tried to equip it. It's 2 one-handed weapons. I tried to equip it. It would not equip in my offhand. So I'm like, this ability is useless. And it is that like maybe a little bit of a tutorial or instructions would help with that. At least tell me how I can dual wield.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that was an option the entire time. I was just running around with sword and shield. But it turns out, like, oh, I can run around with 2 swords. And honestly, I feel like as a fighter, 2 swords be fucking badass.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like, I want this game to do good. Because I did have fun playing it for the most part. It's very rough around the edges, and it needs some work. But there were times I was having fun.
Yeah.
And I hope they try to pull in some sort of solo play.
Yeah, like just set an option, because it's only 15 players on a server. Like, it's not like it should be a big deal to fill a game of 15 people that are solo queuing. It's not like it's PUBG and trying to put 100 people into a game.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm even saying, like, give me, hopefully they can figure this out, give me an option to do custom matches with just me and my friends.
Yeah.
And not have to fill in a full lobby, or give me an option and this character can be their own thing and not part of the open world or the multiplayer world, where I could just go in and play the game by myself and like learn the maps and figure out where things might be, figure out how to advance better, things like that, before I start to go into multiplayer and just get my ass handed to me immediately.
Yeah, and like I'll be honest, I played mostly as the wizard. Even the AI creatures were incredibly difficult if more than one attacked at a time.
Yeah, there were a couple of instances where I went from half health to dead in one hit.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, they make a point to tell you, like, oh, aim for the head. If you hit a limb, you're not going to do as much damage as if you were to hit the head. Aim for the head, aim for the body. And I guess it's the same for the NPCs. If you aim, I guess the NPCs can aim for or hit the head. And it's, like, when it comes to a game like this, maybe don't give them that option to aim for the head.
I mean, and that's all well and good if the attacks weren't so painfully slow.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, because, like, playing as a fighter with sword and shield, if I'm attacking, it takes me so long to be able to pull my shield out and defend in general, that, like, the shield is generally useless.
Mm-hmm.
And I adapted a lot of 7 Days to Die battle techniques of go in, attack once or twice, move back. Because by the time your second attack is about to hit or is hitting, they're finishing their swing for their hit, and you gotta move behind you to actually stop from getting hit. Otherwise you're gonna get hurt, and you're gonna die really quickly.
But I totally agree that, like, the premise is cool, but it needs a lot of work for it to be something I would want to sink a bunch of time into.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they do good and either send out a survey or whatever to the people who do these playtests so like we can let them know, because like if they actually listen to these surveys, if they actually listen to what people are liking, not liking, things like that, the balancing issues, this game could have a lot. It could have a huge fan base. There were tons of streamers playing it on Monday night and Tuesday as well. There were tons of streamers playing it. Big streamers too, not just like the small ones. Not like the under 20 or under 40 viewers. Like there were like a couple of like 500-600 viewer streamers playing this game. It has the world's eyes on it right now. And like they really need to like make sure this thing is refined before they say it's an official release.
Yeah, I mean it does say Q4 of 2023, so they have a year until they get to that point, but
yeah. But it was really cool. Cobb, honestly, if they can get some sort of like single player mode in it, I think you would enjoy it.
And you know what? If there was a single player mode, I would give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. Like even if they do like a solo PvP mode, I think you might dig that more, because you can get through a match without fighting anyone. Since it is PvE as well, a lot of the players that you can watch who are dying, like they're more often than not dying from the NPCs than they are actual players.
Yeah, a lot of times with like those sorts of games, I end up just getting very frustrated and disinterested when like you're focusing on the PvE side of it, and then some asshole comes up and just takes you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is like that's generally why I'd rather play single player games. Like I don't want my game to be dictated by another human being.
Yeah. The other thing that I think they need to fix is loot. Is loot level throughout the map, essentially, and enemy difficulty throughout the map, because there were a lot of times I was starting on the outskirts of the map and getting better loot than in the middle of the map where the ring closes in on. And it's like, that's neat that the harder loot is outside, because then you only have a shorter amount of time to get it, but at the same time, all the PvP should be in the middle when everyone's trying to fight each other for the good loot or escape. So I think they need to, like, rework either where people spawn, because a lot of times I did spawn next to good loot areas, but it just never had a good opportunity to explore it all because somebody else would spawn right there. Or the good loot area was also covered in, like, 3 skeletal mages that fucking destroy you no matter what you do, because magic is extremely powerful in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's really hard to dodge if you're right up on the enemy.
Yeah, I just opened the Steam page for it and like skimmed through like the video they have on there. It has very like Elder Scroll vibes.
Yeah,
like as far as like aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say like, it's very Elder Scrolls,
which means like I actually probably wouldn't enjoy it because I tried Skyrim and did not like that game.
Fair. I mean,
No.
This also plays way worse in its current state than Elder Scrolls plays.
Oh yeah, it is very rough. It needs to be refined playstyle. Even graphically a little bit. Like the lighting really needs to be worked on.
That's a bummer, because if it plays worse than fucking Elder Scrolls, that's... Ugh.
I mean, I'll clarify, like, the game ran incredibly fine. Like, it was...
But control-wise and
60
combat
plus.
and everything was bad?
The controls, fine. Just like I said, your character moves painfully slow, and there is no sprinting.
So
there's no run. There's a crouch.
Yeah, you could crouch or walk.
If you hit shift, which is normally what run is, if you hit shift, they walk.
Well, no, I mean, I'd say most games shift is walk, at least like first-person shooters. But also, walking usually is supposed to make your footsteps like basically nothing.
Silent.
And I don't know that it really affected much because I still got aggroed by shit all the fucking time while walking.
Yeah, like also, it affects
when you crouch,
walking...
you can't fucking open doors.
Yeah.
Or when you're walking, if you're holding shift, you can't open a fucking door.
Yeah. And then opening doors takes time. Closing doors also takes time, just not as much. So that's part of the strategy. And the enemies aggro so fucking far.
Yeah.
And it's not even Steam Deck verified.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even...
No, I know. That's...
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. It's got some legs. It should run pretty... It should be good, hopefully, as long as they listen to what people have to say. Because if I was talking to other people about it, I was talking to one other person about it, and watching some streamers, and like a lot of people are having the same problems. If you're solo queuing, you're out of luck, so they need to balance that out, and some of the enemies need balancing, and this, like, there are things that people really like about this game, but it really needs a lot of work in the next year. And hopefully they listen and don't just, hopefully, like, this doesn't discourage them, but also hopefully they listen so that they make a really good game and can monetize this in some way, shape, or form, because they're putting a lot of work into it.
It also made me realize
usually the goal.
Just play Escape from Tarkov.
Escape from Tarkov scares me, because at least in this, when you group up with someone, you know who they are. Like, you know what they look like, you know what class they are, and I think you spawn next to each other. Whereas in Escape, you don't see names above anybody, and, like, you might not know your partner's coming towards you, because you don't spawn next to each other either. I think you spawn next to each other in this game, or maybe at least really close to each other. I don't know, but yeah, Escape from Tarkov scares me, but I do want to give it a try someday.
I don't know if I've ever heard of that. Like, it sounds familiar, but I don't know that I know what it is.
It's relatively new.
No, it's been out for like 10 years, dude.
Has it? I'm just learning about it over the past like maybe year. But it is
apparently is when it was released.
5 years.
It is essentially it's like it's kind of a battle royale where like you spawn in and the goal is to escape. And I don't know if there's objectives or whatnot to do in the escaping, or if it's just get to a certain point. But there are players that are trying to escape, and some players are just trying to prevent you from escaping. And you can just teammate with anybody on the field if you can get in contact with them. Or you can solo queue in, and if you bring really good equipment and you're killed, you lose that equipment. So, but if you're able to escape, like we said, you can bring your equipment with you. So it's always that like tug of war of like, what should I bring? Am I gonna win? Am I gonna lose? Is it worth losing this? But then like when you get the really good thing, it's like, oh, I got this really good thing. Like, I don't want to use it because I got it, but at the same time, like, well, you got it, so why not use it? And it's just, yeah, it's a different kind of like first person battle royale-esque game.
And actually, I can't tell if it's actually out or just in, like, early access.
It's probably still technically early access.
Because it doesn't look like it's available on Steam, and when you go to their site, they just have a beta is available pre-order option.
And if you scroll down further, they're at patch 0.12.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't scroll down that far. That seems like a lot for 0.12. $44? Huh.
I mean, it's going to get you the full game when it is officially, but like from what I hear,
it's apparently been released in beta for over 5 years, man.
I mean, 7 Days to Die has been in alpha for almost 10 years.
Yeah, and
literally 7 Days to Die was the highest grossing Kickstarter of its time in 2012. It is on alpha 20, going to be 21 in the next few months.
Like, frankly, at that point, like, those people just need to stop being scared and just fucking make it a full release.
But, like, each time they do, and like, their alpha, like, they're making money on it. People are loving it. I go back and play that game all the time, and it's, they're actually, like, eventually, they're working on incorporating bandits and a storyline in the next alpha or two, and then, like, I think their goal for 7 Days to Die is Alpha 22 is the last one before their beta test and official release.
Apparently, it actually came to PS4.
What? 7 Days to Die?
Yeah.
Yes. There is a version, but it's like Alpha 16.
It's just rare for Sony to allow early access alpha build things to be released.
Yeah, I think because it was on Xbox as well, which Xbox used to not allow anything below 1.0 on. That, like, because Xbox did it, PlayStation did it, but then the dev team that the Fun Pimps had to actually run the console version, they quit, or they don't do it anymore. So that version is, like, 4 alphas old.
So it was Telltale Publishing.
Yeah. And so they are working on getting a new dev team for a modern
according to Wikipedia,
version.
They are no longer being developed on the consoles.
Yeah.
Yes,
but it also looks like the console releases got different versioning because they were released as 1.0 versions with, like, the alpha number as, like, a second decimal.
Yes. And within the past 6 months, they are working on finding a dev for Alpha 20.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, because they released it on Game Pass, PC Game Pass, and Xbox Game Pass, and they're like, you guys will be getting Alpha 20 eventually, we're looking for a team.
Yeah, it looks like 2017 was the last time the console version had any sort of update.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. Anything else you guys want to say about Darker and Dark, though? Or Dark and Darker?
I hope it turns out good.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my eyes on this and
same.
Check it out during some of its play tests, and just, I'm going to watch the timeline of this thing and see, hopefully, like, it turns out better. I might not play every playtest, but I'll check out the playtests as they come.
Cool. So Rich, then, how was Resident Evil 8? Because that was your first playthrough, right?
That was my first ever playthrough of Resident Evil 8, was this past weekend, and that is a fucking amazing game. It blew my mind. Honestly, it is the first Resident Evil that has heart. And I'm not just talking about the hearts on the bodies of the zombies and whatnot. It literally has, like, emotion and heart behind it.
You just like the tall vampire lady, that's all.
Look, Lady D, she's absolute mommy material, yes. But, she only is a quarter of the game. She's not, like, a full-on, she's only one of 4 bosses. Or one of, like, well, there's, like, maybe in total, like, 10 bosses, but she's, like, one of 4 main bosses.
Are her daughters considered bosses, or are they, like, mini bosses?
Mini bosses, mostly. Like, sub-bosses. Because they're easy.
I know,
and
I think I saw your stream for, like, a minute where you were running away from one of them.
Yeah, there's instances where you have to run away from them because they are the mechanics to fight them are different, which is why you had to run away until you got to a certain room or a certain location to fight them. But overall, like, they're very scripted moments. They're not, like, random moments or anything like that. Like, you do have to kill them all in order to progress, but they're not as hard as some of the other bosses. They're quite easy, honestly. But, like, yeah, that's only a quarter of the game. And in a roughly 9-hour game, like, once you get through the castle, you're still looking at a good, probably 5 or 6 hours left in this game. So, like, 3 to 4 hours in the castle, and then another 5 or 6 with a bunch of other enemies. But, like, yeah, Lady D was awesome. But overall, the game itself, like, the story behind it, the story that like, they try to impart in this, Cobb, you'll love it, because it's all about family. It is 100% about family.
But do they go to space? In cars?
No.
Then,
No. But it is still about family.
That's Resident Evil 9, Cobb.
Does
you never know.
You know what? You're right. If this is 8, does Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson pick up a missile and turn around and shoot it back at somebody?
No, but, one of the enemies you fight is basically Magneto, or Meth Head Magneto, and you have a tank that happens to be made completely out of an alloy that he cannot control. That he made himself for some fucking reason. Doesn't make sense, but he did it. Like, Magneto created this tank that you then drive and fight him with. Makes no sense. It's silly that he did it, but, like, no, you don't get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You do get some Chris Redfield. There were some fantastic fucking lines in this. One of the lords, he's all like messed up and amphibian-like, and like he's like the black sheep, quote, the black sheep of the lords, and like is very socially anxious and thinks everyone hates him. And at one point, he turns into his fish self, splashes at you, and his line is, "I am the best. Mommy, love me," as he's shouting and coming at you.
Jesus.
There's a shopkeep. At one point, he says, "What are you buying?" Which anybody who likes Resident Evil 4 would understand that one. He even references, "That's something a friend of mine used to say." And then the best line was, who said it? I think it was Heisenberg, who's Magneto, says, "Chris Redfield, that boulder-punching son of a bitch," that I just died laughing the second I heard it. So, like, they have a good number of really good callbacks. And they connect a lot of the story and why Resident Evil 7 and 8 are taking place in this world and how they connect in general. Like, but it's really a lore drop room right at the end that they tell you all of this. As long as you read all of the files. And it worked so much better. Movement speed was faster. Controls felt faster and better. Like, just overall, in general, this game was a major upgrade from 7. And had a lot more of the scariness and horror that you expect from, like, a relatively survival horror spooky game. As well as, like, still, like, the fun sequences that you want to see in, like, a Resident Evil. I shared on my Discord 2 clips of me just being outright fucking terrified. And this game, one was from the expansion, the other was from the main game. And we were talking earlier, Cobb, about horror movies and how I do horror. I don't find monsters scary. I've never found monsters scary. But what I do find scary are porcelain dolls, dummies, like human-sized, like, dummies, like, and fetile babies, like monster babies. Those are all fucking scary. This game has all fucking 3 of them.
So were you screaming while watching it?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, if you were to watch the first clip I shared of me playing it, it's the part where you encounter, like, the monster baby. And this thing, it comes, like, crawling at you, and it's all gross and disgusting, and it's crying. And and then it says Dada, and I'm just like, no, I can't with this. Like, it was some of the scariest stuff I've ever experienced in, honestly, a Resident Evil game. It was like this sequence, and then they bring you back into that house in the expansion, and you basically encounter weeping angels, where
cool.
they're dummies that if you stare at them, they won't move, but the second you take your eyes off them, they come towards you. And, like, you gotta see how these things move. Like, they're not super fast like the weeping angels, but you gotta see how they move. They click and clack, and, like, their motions are a little bit more, like, in like a lower frame rate, essentially, where they're not just, like, walking. They're, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. But, like, they're not smooth. It's, like, it's because they can only move in certain points of their body, and it's not as fluid as, like, a human. And, like, they click and clack around to come to you, and then, like, they peek around the corner, and then once they see you staring at them, they stop, and their eyes just glow at you. And I was just like, yo, like, this is literally the Weeping Angel's probably the scariest thing in Doctor Who. And, like, I was just like, this is a Whovian's nightmare right here, man. This is fucking terrifying. Because as you're walking through these rooms, like, you have one following you, and then you walk by another, and then you walk by, like, a third or a fourth, and then they're just all chasing after you. And it's just like, man, this is wild. This is so cool, but it is wild.
Yeah, no, I've actually heard nothing but good things about Resident Evil 8. So it's nice to hear that you had a good time with it.
Yeah, it is the best story out of all of them. The honestly probably one of the most fun ones.
How was
And
the DLC?
the DLC was amazing because it really helped wrap up the story, like helped you like get that sense of family that they were really trying to instill into the whole Resident Evil 8 package, and like kind of helped you wrap up a little of like maybe the slightly unresolved feelings that you might have had at the end of 8. Because Resident Evil 8's been out for what, a year, right?
Yeah, it was like spring of 2021.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, you guys aren't going to play it anyway, really. The main character, the character you play as, dies at the end of it. And the whole point of the movie was to rescue his child, Rose, who you play as in the DLC. She never got to meet her dad because she was 6 months, roughly 6 months at the time, where maybe 6 months to a year, where like her the Shadows of Rose story is 16 years later. So she's about 16, 17 years old at the time of that story. And you, at the very end of the initial game, you get a sequence. You see like a post-credits scene where it's her at the age that she's in during Shadows of Rose, going to visit Ethan's tombstone and say hi to her dad on his birthday. And like they have a little bit of a scene with that. And then it's like this DLC takes place between the end of Resident Evil 8 and that scene right there, where it kind of helps you learn if she ever gets to understand who her dad was, what he did, and things like that. Because this mostly plays out, not necessarily in her head, but like she has powers that lets her connect to the mold. And they had some mold that she was connecting into to try to find something within the mold itself to purify her powers and anybody who was infected by the mold. It was a really weird Resident Evil concept, but it played very well into like learning about the character and how her life was, and how kids are fucking mean, man. They carried her for being different, and it's just messed up. And like it was just torture for her life, for 16 years of life, and she didn't know her dad, and she knew he was a good guy, but that's it. And like you get to see them actually interact a little bit near the end in this spirit world because of what the mold is. And it was just like a really good, like, there were times I was near crying because of how bad her life was, but there was also times I was near crying because she actually got to like learn about her dad a bit during this. And I was like, man, this is super emotional. And like, this is what I mean by these two had heart, was like no other Resident Evil game really struck emotions like this one did.
So do they get into like, so Resident Evil 7, it's Ethan goes to the house to find his wife.
To the bayou, yes.
There is no baby at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does the wife not die at the mansion?
Nope.
In the bayou?
You rescue her.
For some reason I thought she was like a dead monster in that. I never finished it.
There are two endings in Resident Evil 7. And you get to decide that ending based on who you give the serum to after fighting the dad for the last time before the shit portion. If you give it to Mia, your girlfriend, she survives and becomes your wife. If you give it to Zoe, I think she survives. I don't actually remember. I might have given it to Zoe in my first playthrough, but I can't fully remember. And Mia doesn't survive.
So the canon ending is Mia survives.
The canon is Mia survives, yes. But so I think it's 2 years, because Resident Evil 8 came out in 2020 because it takes place in 2020. It's
not that old, is it?
It literally takes place February 2nd, 2020. Or does it take place in February 2nd, or was she born February 2nd?
So Resident Evil 8 came out in 2001. So it was last spring.
2021? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes place in 2020. Which is like, it takes place in February 2020. She caused the COVID outbreak. 100% it caused COVID. Resident Evil.
And I'm just, the setting for this, according to Wikipedia, Resident Evil Village is set 3 years after the events of Resident Evil 7, largely on the day of February 9th, 2021.
Yep.
So it does not take place in 2020. It takes place in 2021.
Oh, is it 20? Well, then she was born in 2020 is what it was. So Rose would be 1 at the time, which means she would be 17. She would be 17 in the Shadows of Rose is what it is. Rose was born in February of 2020.
No, and it's Shadows of Rose. Rose now 16 years old.
Well, she was still born in 2020.
Man,
that's what it is, though.
Your entire timeline has just gotten thrown.
No, because it was 16. Shadows of Rose takes place 16 years after the events of Resident Evil 8.
I think it's just Rose is 16. It's not 16 years.
No, I'm pretty sure she said it's been 16 years. Or somebody said it was 16 years ago. Like this happened 16 years ago.
I don't know. I am reading the synopsis, my friend.
But like Rose was born in 2020 is really like I remember seeing February 2020 in like the files and stuff. But yeah, it was a very good Resident Evil. There are a few things that I kind of wish they cut down a little bit on. Like besides the tank, they didn't have any other special scenarios like that. I wasn't really too into the tank. They also had a whole sequence where you played as Chris, which wasn't really that life-threatening in a sense. Like, it wasn't that was more action-packed, and I guess anytime you play as Chris now, it's action. But, like, it brought some more questions into the Resident Evil universe, and that's also where you found out that, like, oh, the mold is the reason they were able to make the T-virus and the G-virus and all the viruses in the original Resident Evils, because Oswald Spencer found it in the 50s and brought it back and experimented on it, found the progenitor virus from Resident Evil 6 and combined all the mold and the progenitor into the T-virus to create the zombies, and it just, like, it combined everything, which was just like, oh, well, so Mother Miranda, the final enemy, is the reason for all of fucking Resident Evil, because she wanted to bring her daughter back, Evie, or Evelyn, who you had to deal with in Resident Evil 7.
So, did a little bit of digging for you. Rose was born August 2nd, 2020. So she was just under a year old when 8 takes place, which makes it so it would be 16 years later. Would also have her be about 16, depending on what month basically things happened. Because like she wouldn't have turned 17 until August, or she would not have turned 1 until August, the year that 8 takes place.
I could have swore I saw a file that said, like, or something that said she was born in February 2020.
Well, maybe it was you saw that she was born in 2020, and the February is what you're remembering as when the game happens?
Well, yeah, it was February 9th. Like, February is when the game happens. But I also thought, like, it was, like, all in 2020. But I don't know. These past 3 years have all combined to me that I don't really know anymore.
That's fair.
There was a pandemic, living in a pandemic life joke. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was awestruck at the end of the DLC. I was awestruck at the end of the game. It just, like, the one thing I wish they didn't have, they had a shopkeep again. They brought that back. They haven't had a shopkeep since Resident Evil 4, but they still had, like, a shop situation in 5 and 6, but they didn't have it in 7. But they brought back a shopkeep. The only problem that I don't really like is that he also sold ammo, which they never really had ammo with the exception of grenade launcher grenades. They never had ammo for sale in any of the games. And that, like, kind of takes away part of the survival portion.
So how often were enemies in the game using guns that, like, you would be able to get ammo from them?
Never. There's a crafting system. But, like, if you killed an enemy, if you killed an enemy, they wouldn't drop ammo. They would either drop money or they would drop crafting supplies.
Well, because I feel like in a little bit of earlier games that I've played, I feel like you were always in situations where it's plausible that there is ammo available that have been left by either people that were, like, in the mansion or in the Resident Evil 4, like, village and castle sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. No, most of the villagers, most of the enemies were werewolves. They didn't use weapons.
That's what I figured.
Maybe they would use a bow and arrow. But a majority of the enemies, which there was like some actual different variations of enemies in this one, with the as opposed to in 7 where it was just all mold men and boring. But yeah, it was like they would drop iron, or like rusty metal, or iron scraps, or gunpowder, or herbs or whatever that you needed to combine to make your ammo. They wouldn't necessarily always drop ammo. But it is still in the same system as like kind of like Resident Evil 4 it feels, where like the game is going to give you exactly what you need. But like I really didn't feel like they should have given you the ability to buy ammo as well. Because it kind of took away from the worrying about ammo, because if you play that game and get every treasure item, which it does the same thing that Resident Evil 2 and 3 and other Resident Evils do, where the map changes color if you cleared out the room. So it's kind of easy to get all the treasure items. But if you play the game to get all the treasure items, you're going to have so much money that like going into the end of it, I went and fought a side boss to get a treasure item, used all my ammo in that side boss, and instead of like going into the next part scared, I just bought all my ammo again. And I was like, alright, fuck it. And spent 20,000 of the 300,000 lie that I had to equip myself with as much ammo as possible. There is limited ammo stores though. It is limited how much you can buy, but he still throughout the game gets more and more. So if you don't buy it until the very end, you can buy like 3, 4, 5 full clips of handgun ammo and a bunch of shotgun ammo and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it was wild.
Well, since you managed to play through 9 Resident Evil games, I almost said Final Fantasies for some reason. How would you say you rank them?
All right, so we're gonna go from worst to best, and we're starting off with an asterisk of Resident Evil 5. It is my least favorite game. Asterisk solo. If I were to be playing with somebody else, if I had a co-op partner, this might be a little bit higher up on the list. But because the game is built around multiplayer and built around co-op and not to support co-op, it doesn't really work that well. There are instances that having a co-op partner would make the game a hell of a lot easier and a hell of a lot more enjoyable. But because you have to manage 2 characters, but you can only control one of them, it loses a lot on me. The next one is Resident Evil 0, which is no shocker. It kind of runs into the same issue as 5. You have 2 characters you control, except this time you can control them, but it's still you're managing resources between 2 characters. There's no item boxes, so you have to go back and forth picking items up that you leave on the ground. And one of the characters is basically just a glorified carry box. And the best way to play that game is using speedrun strategy of anytime you enter into a room, you can control the NPC character, or the character you're not playing main as, to just run backwards into the doorway, and then you control the main character to go to the next room, and they'll teleport with you. Like, that's the best way to play that game. Okay. This, next on the list, this is probably the first shock for everyone. I'm putting Resident Evil 4 at, what is this, 7th place?
Man, what a fake fan.
No, like, look, we've talked about it plenty of times. I'm not going to go over it more, but...
Fake fan, right, Drew?
Like, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and I told them, like, 4 is not the best. And they're like, well, when I'm talking about games and how they are, I like to talk about them how they were back in the day and not today. But even back in the day, it was groundbreaking to have groundbreaking for Resident Evil to have the third-person camera angle, but, like, and it was groundbreaking to have the better aim system, but it's still, what the game became just isn't what nostalgia had me have it at. And it didn't live up to the nostalgia, it didn't live up to the hype of what I had back then. And the things that I remembered about it, frankly, were still fun, because I don't hate QTEs. I think they can be done well. If they're done well, they're great. If they're done poorly, they're shit. And Resident Evil 4 does them well. But it's like, I don't know, it just doesn't live up to what I remember it being. And it is very rough around the edges. I still don't think it really requires a remake, because everyone's saying it needs a remake. It was such an iconic game. But it isn't going to be that iconic game with that remake.
I mean, it needs a remake the same way 2 and 3 did. Like, those games are barely playable today. Like,
I
you
mean-
remake them so that they are fun and playable by today's standards and mechanics.
But
And it's not being
well,
remade
like-
for you either. It's being remade for people that love the game and people that have never played the game.
like, let's go into the argument that I had for an entire day with Eric, where he's like, people remember this game and it's so iconic because of the third-person camera angle, the over-the-shoulder, the this and then that. But if they remake this game because of those reasons, it's not going to be as iconic as it was back then.
No, but that's not why they're remaking it. They're
But-
remaking it because they already remade 2 and 3. Like, it's
I
a
mean,
cash grab. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, I also, like, I loved the 2 and 3 remake. I love them. But I personally, I would probably still have this list set probably close to where it was, even if I didn't play the 2 and 3. Because, like, 2 just holds such a high standard, such a high level of, I have such high love for 2 that, like, I enjoy
Because
that
of
game.
nostalgia.
Nostalgia and, like, the old school control scheme isn't broken. It works.
No, it's bad. It's only not bad if it's a thing that you did when you were younger. I did not play games with tank controls. I can't do that today.
But that's the thing. You'll get used to it. You start playing it, you'll get used to it after a
But
little
that
bit.
doesn't make it not broken in a way, you know?
But-
Like, it's what they had to do back then. Like, it's not like they did a bad thing. That was the only way to... Like, the fact that they found a way to do that is actually super impressive. It's
Agreed.
just, by today's standards, it's not good.
But I didn't have I when I played these games originally, I played them with D-pad because we didn't have analog sticks back then. I played all of these games. I played all of these games with an analog stick, and I didn't have any issues with turning with anything like that. When I say any, I'm talking 0, 1, and 4 because those are the ones with the original control schemes. And like it isn't.
They didn't
Like,
update that one remake when they released it on like PC and PlayStation and stuff.
What are you talking about?
So like the one remake, it's the GameCube remake, but they did the HD remaster for it in like 2015.
Uh-huh.
Did they not make any changes to like the way that controlled since it was releasing like in the dual analog stick era?
I mean, I don't think so.
Oh, that was a legit question. Like I was asking, you just played it.
Well, no, like I like with the exception of being able to control the game with a control stick, like I mean I don't think so. Like it still has that what I had the understanding of tanky controls. Like, and we even went back and looked at videos. You could turn and everything while going forward and whatnot, and it still had that feeling. You needed to stop to get a tighter turn, otherwise you're making a wider turn. It has a stationary cameras. You can't move any of the cameras around. They didn't do anything with that.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it's all still Resident Evil 1.
And I will say, like, tank controls like, the games that had tank controls, when they converted them over to analog stick but left them with tank controls, they were less aggressive because, like you said, you could do those more, like, looping wide turns by just, like, gradually moving the analog stick over, whereas with the D-pad, your only option was to stop, turn right until you're facing the direction, or left until you're facing the direction with the move, and then press up again.
But that's not... You had 8 ranges of motion in those games. Generally, if you needed a tight turn, you had to stop and turn. But you could hold up and left and get that winding turn.
I will take your word for it. I played very few tank control games because they were not fun for me.
So, like early gaming in general, you didn't have 360 range of motion like you do in modern games. You had an 8-point range of motion.
Not always. Not all systems had diagonal. Or not all games, I should say, had diagonal.
But you still, like, if you hit left and down, they would curve left and go down.
That's what I'm saying. Not all games had that.
There are some games that there are no diagonal moves.
Like, if you hit left and at the same time, the game would pick whichever one it thinks you inputted first and move in just that direction. It was real dumb. Drew, what were we talking about, like, last week that we were talking about diagonal movement, that, like, a game that didn't have it?
Resident Evil.
I mean,
No. This wasn't on the show. This was, like, literally just, like, a conversation, I think. Mortal Kombat, we were talking about...
yeah.
About specials, and I honestly did not realize that Sub-Zero's Ice Blast was not quarter circle.
Yeah.
It was just down forward or forward down, whichever direction.
Yeah.
I always did the same quarter circle motion you would do for fireballs in Street Fighter. So I just assumed it was a quarter circle. But it turns out that like Resident Evil, Mortal Kombat did not do the diagonal motion for any of their attacks. They were all just up, down, left, right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, fucking Mortal Kombat ruins everything.
But yeah, so look, I'm shocked at myself for saying that Resident Evil 4 is number 7 of 9.
Well,
I'm shocked myself.
Next year, you'll play Resident Evil 4 Remake, and you'll figure out where that fits in the list.
I mean, I'm not getting it.
Yet.
I'm not, unless it's on a really good sale. And I mean, the game's probably releasing at $70. So
Unfortunately.
I'm telling you, it's got to be at least a 55 to 60% sale minimum for me to go ahead and buy it. Because I've played through this story already. I've played through it twice. At least probably more than twice, depending on how many times I played through it back in the day. Like, I don't need this story again. I don't need to play it again. It's like,
you need to see the updated handsome Leon.
I saw him in Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, but now he's a little bit older and edgier.
And he still falls in love with Ada after only knowing her for 2 fucking hours. That's the funniest thing about Resident Evil, is Leon falls in love with Ada Wong in the course of 2 hours of surviving a crisis in Resident Evil 2.
I mean, at least he doesn't fall in love with the teenager in Resident Evil 4.
She tries to hit on him.
Well, yeah, he's Leon, but he does not reciprocate.
At the end, she's like, so what do you want to do after this? You want to come hang out in my... I don't remember what she fucking says, but I also don't remember how old she is in that one, but he's like
16.
No. But like, I'm like, man, this is so early 2000s. Like, that is such a 2000s thing to happen right there. But I
what is your next game?
forgotten that happened. But next one, and just by hair, is Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6.
I thought you were going to have that higher, I'm going to be honest.
No, it's better than 4 in my opinion, but it's not the greatest because it's not what you want from a Resident Evil game. It's more an action game, and it's not really scary. It's very much, like I've said this before, one of my viewers said it, they looked at the Resident Evil animated movies and said, that's what we're doing for our next game. And that's what it was. It builds on the story of Resident Evil in its own sort of way, but it doesn't really do a lot else. It works better with the control schemes that they created within Resident Evil 4, and it is a much more fun game, and it is if you notice, my bottom 4 are all the games with multiple characters you have to control. And this is the only one that you don't actually have to manage that character. Whereas the other 3, you have to manage that character. And that mechanic alone really kills these games for me. Having to manage a secondary character, having to manage their health, having to make sure they don't die or do something stupid, it takes away part of the fun for me. Which is where Resident Evil 6 comes into play. Like, the AI is actually, like, the AI for 5 had pinpoint aim, but the AI for 6, like, I didn't have to worry about them. They could be getting attacked, they could be getting knocked over, and that's fine. I don't have to worry about healing them because they're just AI. This game was built to support co-op, whereas Resident Evil 5 was built based on co-op. And that's where, like, that one kind of edges out the rest of the bottom 4.
Okay.
But yeah, like, the thing that really takes away from 6, as opposed to the rest of them, are the set pieces in 6 are just bland and boring. Like, if like, Resident Evil 0 had better settings, then, honestly, Resident Evil 4 had a better set piece and set design than, Resident Evil 0 had better set piece and set design than 4 or 5 and 6. 6 was just boring. It was just boring. Next on the list is 7. 7 is number 5 of my top 5. It's got the new take. It's got the need to actually worry about ammo. It's got an interesting story with new characters. The setting is very different and very cool. It's just, like, the worst part about it is just the pacing, the character pacing, and the lack of diversity in monsters. If the monsters were a little bit more diverse and not just slime monster and slime licker, it'd be a little bit better. but like the monsters are just kind of dull and boring. They all look the same. It's nothing too special, but like the game itself was solid. And don't get me wrong, all of these games, in my opinion, top tier games, with the exception of maybe 0. 0 is probably the lowest rating, but better than 5 if you're playing solo.
I was going to say, it's the worst one, but not your least favorite.
Exactly. Yeah. Then this one, it unfortunately mostly lives on in nostalgia, I think, and that's Resident Evil 1 is number 4 on my list. It like I said, it really does mostly live on nostalgia, but it has, especially the HD remaster, the GameCube version has a bunch of different puzzles, has a lot more to explore, has a lot more different kind of bosses and monsters that you have to deal with. You got the Cerberus, you got the Hunters, you got the zombies themselves, you have the plant monsters. It's got the most sort of mystery behind the story, maybe besides 7, because it is the first one. You don't really know what's going on. Yeah, graphically it's not that great, but honestly, the set pieces are better than Resident Evil 4. The set pieces are better than Resident Evil 6. Like, it because it's like that painted setting, it actually looks better than some of these other games.
It does actually hold up pretty well for...
Yeah.
Like, it is an HD remaster, but even then, like, HD textures don't necessarily, like, fix old graphics, but, like, that game, like, does actually hold up better than you'd expect it to.
Yeah, because like the way they did the settings and scenery is like they did what old school cartoons would do. Like the background is going to look nice because it's all like painted and set, but then it's going to be the characters that might look a little janky and whatnot because they're the things moving around that you're paying attention to, and that's like really what they did well in like even the early ones, even like 2 and 3, like they still look good because of how they did the settings in the background.
Which is actually kind of cool when you think about it.
Yeah. Then next is, at my 3 spot is fittingly Resident Evil 3 Remake. And I have a tough time putting this at 3. That's like just barely edges out on 3. It might be 4 and Resident Evil 1 be in the 3 spot. But like I keep going back and forth with these two. 3 is very fucking short. Very short. And that's, really, it's short and its biggest nemesis isn't really a factor. Like,
But bumped.
Literally, like Nemesis, like the thing they tried to do in 3 originally was Nemesis was always chasing after you. The thing they did in 3 Remake is Nemesis is chasing after you, but he is more scripted than Mr. X was in Resident Evil 2 Remake.
And I mean, I know he was very scripted in in the original 3.
But so was Mr. X in the original 2. Was very scripted. So like they could have added to it where like I didn't worry about whether or not I was going to run, like, because I knew the scenes that Nemesis comes into play, I never was like, oh my god, I have to hurry up before Nemesis shows up. Like, he is super scripted. This is, like, similar to kind of some of the issues with Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6. This one is super linear as well. Like, you do a little bit of exploring in certain areas, but generally it's kind of just go straight forward. There's certain areas where there's some backtracking and, like, uncovering and getting a card key to get into a thing, but for the most part, this is just go forward. This is the first one in a series where it's just pretty much go forward and play the game and not have to worry about coming back and forth and whatnot. And it's just, like I said, it's short. The only thing that really carries it on is there's a lot of additional content. There's a lot of, like, there's, like, not mercenary, maybe there's a mercenaries, but, like, there's a lot of extra stuff you can do, and because I put it being a short game is both a positive and a negative. Because as positive, it's a short game, you can sit down, you can play it whenever you want, and not have to worry about, like, you could sit down and play it for 5 hours, or once you learn it and beat it once, you can play it in 2 hours. And just like you want to try to unlock something, it's not like a drag to try to unlock it after 8 or 9 hours. You get it done in about 2 or 3. So it's like, it's a positive and a negative. And like, other than that, like, yeah, Resident Evil 3, like, that's why it's in this area of, like, I think 1's better, but also 3's better. And like, they just go back and forth in my head. And to cap this off with the number 1 spot, because you'll be able to figure out who's number 2 by me telling you who's number 1. This is another hard one, because both of these games I love. I absolutely love Resident Evil 2, and I absolutely love Resident Evil Village. I'm going to have to give my number one spot to Village, though.
Really?
It is taken Resident Evil 2, just because, mostly because of the story. The rest of the game works very well. Like, Resident Evil 2, I had a hard time finding negatives between 2 and 3, or 2 and Village. And my biggest issue at 2 are the zombies are basically immortal. I've killed zombies like 4 times. I heard their death noises. Still living the next time I go into that room. And that's like kind of a problem with the 3 remake as well, is the zombies are very the same. They made those games more to maim the zombies instead of straight up kill them. But the biggest problem with 2 is your knife has limited durability, so you can't sit there and kill the zombie with the knife, because you need to make sure you have that defensive weapon.
So, out of curiosity, do you think any part of that final decision has to do with the fact that you just played Village and you played 2 very much closer to the beginning of the month?
No, I don't. 2 has always been a top tier spot. But I've been keeping a list. I was going to show my camera, but you guys can't see my camera. I've been keeping a list with pros and cons, negatives and positives about these games. And
okay, so you weren't just making this list up as you went.
No. I have a list on my phone. And that's how I knew what numbers go where and whatnot. Otherwise I would have forgotten what numbers I've already mentioned at this point. Come on. I don't remember what my Desert Island movies were
from a month and a half ago.
Exactly. So it's like Resident Evil 2, it's mostly faithful to the original story. Has the better game. It has the enhanced gameplay. When I originally wrote this, it was the least confusing story, which at the time it was. And it's it is super entertaining, but the zombies feel essentially immortal. Between the 2 different stories, they are actually very inconsistent when you're playing A scenario and B scenario with certain events, but it's there was only so many set pieces they could design and use. But if you're when you play Resident Evil 2 as Claire first, and you defeat William at the end, and you talk to his wife, or Sherry's mom, and she gives you the cure, and you go and you cure Sherry, you have that exact same fight with Sherry's mom, who was dead after Claire's fight with him. And it's just that's inconsistent. I just had this same exact fight in this same exact arena on my last playthrough. And in between A scenario and B scenario, if I were to start the game with A scenario as Leon, there would be different events that transpire as Claire. But it's it just kind of just is inconsistent, which faults it and hurts it. The other problem, and like I said, I was really struggling to find problems. When you play the game in scenario B, you get a starting gun that is not a 9mm. And then all the 9mm ammo that you find in the game is turned into the ammo for that gun instead. So, okay. Which doesn't seem like a problem, but you get the ability to craft ammo in this game with finding gunpowders. But if you combine 2 regular gunpowders in this one, you create the 9mm ammo and not the ammo for the new weapon you get. So you essentially have to take up 2 inventory slots for your pistol that you start with, as well as for this new gun that they give you, because you need both sets of ammo to be able to make it through this game. To me, I think they kind of dropped the ball on that. They should have either made it to where they use the same ammo, or combining them in scenario B gives you the ammo for that secondary gun. Because it's also Leon holds it to the side and angled, and it's just it's dumb, but you need them both in early points. But then we get to Resident Evil Village, which really the only cons I can think are the tank and the Chris segment. There wasn't really an ammo shortage because of being able to purchase ammo, and that's really the only major negatives. But the thing that really pulls it together is the story had so much heart behind it, had such feelings, and it really worked. The gameplay worked, everything worked together, and the story itself was just amazing. And that's really what pushes it to the top tier spot.
Which, you know what? Like, that's awesome that they managed to release the 8th game in the series and have it be that good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's that good according to me.
But you're not the only person that speaks highly of 8.
Yeah. But I've talked to other people who said that it doesn't hold up to 4, which I'm like, bullshit. When was the last time you played 4? But they're also the people who say that Resident Evil 6 sucks, but they haven't played it since it launched either. So, it's like, you gotta give these games another try. And
look,
like,
don't tell me what to do.
But like these people have even turned around and said like, "Oh, 4's story just didn't really connect with me and didn't hit with me, and it's not that good." And I'm like, 4's story is way better than or not 4's. Their 8's story didn't connect and hit, but I'm like, 8's story is actually there and works, whereas 4's is just you're a rad dude saving the president's daughter.
I mean, that's like most games. You're a rad dude.
Yeah,
doing a thing.
Well, no, like there's a game called Rad Dudes where the story is you save the president's daughter.
There's also a movie called Rad.
Is there?
Yeah, it's about BMX biking in the early 90s.
Nice.
Yeah.
But
anything else you want to say about Resident Evil?
I didn't get to play the story through third person. I heard that it was honestly not as good in third person as it was in first.
I have heard the opposite from some people who preferred it in third person.
I've heard. I really only talked to 2 people about it, and they both said like third person, it's actually a little bit harder because you have a bigger hitbox, and it's not as good in general. That it feels better in first person. So I never played it in third person, but Shadows of Rose is third person only, so that worked. I'm really, really super interested to know where they're going to go from here after the 4 remake. What Resident Evil 9 is going to be. Yeah, like the thing is like they ended it with a lot going on post 2021 that like is the next one going to take place after the very end in 2036, 37, or is it going to take place between now and 2037?
I imagine it'll probably take place sometime more current. I don't think they're going to jump 15, 16 years into the future, but you never know.
This was supposed to be the end of the Winters story. Winters is their last name.
Yeah.
So like maybe we won't see them again. Maybe we won't see Rose again for a while. But it really flipped the world on top. Like the very end, you find out that the BSAA, the bioweapons security assessment. I don't remember what BSAA means, but it's basically a government-run bio counterterrorism unit. We're using zombies to invade the village, and fight the mold. So, and not Leon. I don't think Leon works for the BSAA. Leon works probably for the U.S. government, but Claire, I believe, works for the BSAA, and Chris and Jill used to work for the BSAA in Resident Evil 6. So it's like they were the good guys that are now the bad guys, or something. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with all that.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so no more Resident Evil talk for...
Thank fucking God.
At least a year, guys. Like, that's just been my entire life for the past fucking month. And it felt amazing at times.
You gotta pick a different series to marathon in October next year.
I'm trying to figure that out. And I know I've got a lot of time, but it's
There's
gonna
like
be
20 Silent Hill games.
I've never really been into Silent Hill, but also they're not really available on the PC.
We can get them available for you.
I mean, we could, but also I'm not doing more than like say 5 in a month anymore.
No, you have to.
This
was
hell
beat this year, so you have to do 10 next year.
No, this was hell, man. Like there were times like when I beat 5, and I think when I beat 5, I forced myself to beat 5 at the time. Like it took until 3 in the morning. And like that's probably part of my lowering its score is because I just wasn't having a good time near the end of that game. And like I needed to beat that because I had the daunting task of 6 and I needed to beat that. Like I had several 9-hour streams throughout this month. I streamed for 30 hours more this month than I did last. Here, let me look this up real quick, and then we'll get to your thing because I want to just mention it or talk to you about it real quick because I find it kind of funny actually.
I think I saw you mention this on like Facebook or Twitter that you streamed like 30 more hours than usual, but your ad revenue stayed the same.
Yeah. So let's go into October. my stream hours, my stream time was 109 hours and 22 minutes. With, let's see, can I get the average viewers? With an average of 5.5 viewers. My revenue in total was $58 for the month of October. When it comes to ad revenue, was $18.56.
How do you have half a viewer?
It's average viewer. So, like, it's, like, based on 100 hours on average, there was about 5 to 6 viewers.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, no, that doesn't, you can't have half a viewer. That doesn't make sense.
Wait, hold on. No, sorry. My ad revenue was $20.51 for October. And then if I go into September, my ad revenue, alright, it changed because of where things were sitting around. $19.04. I made $1 more. And I had, where was it at? Let's go back into September. 73 hours streamed with 5.4 average viewers. So 0.1 average viewer additional. And was it 73 to 109? What's that? 36 additional hours streamed. I only made an extra $1. I'm like, that's weird. I don't know how that works. That is weird.
Yeah, that is
Subscribers
actually
watching versus not subscribers.
But, like, it wouldn't affect, like, it's 15 subs in October, 15 subs in September. So it wouldn't really affect it it shouldn't. I feel like in 30 hours, if I got in 70 hours $20 and I added what's a little under half of that, I'm not saying I should have gotten $10 more, but
sounds like you're saying you should have gotten $10 more.
Maybe like $5 more or something like that. Because my average viewership was up by 0.1. Or it was the same. It's just, it's silly. I'm not, like, mad about it or anything. I just find it funny that, like, 36 additional fucking hours, over half of what I streamed the month before, added to my stream. I only made $1 more.
Hey, man, at least all that time paid off.
Yeah, I mean, it hopefully means...
You increased your revenue.
It hopefully means that I'll have a payout in December. Because if my average time usually nets me about $50, like my average is normally about 73 hours per month. If that got me 53 and I got 58, I really only need to get a $42 a month this month to be able to get my payout.
Which, hey, payouts are good, right?
Yeah, but that's all. I just thought it was funny and I wanted to mention that. Like, I wanted to talk about that.
Right. Well, in that case, going on to the next thing, I got Mario and Rabbids Spark of Hope. I forget if it's plural or not.
How was it?
It is just delightful.
That's what I'm expecting. I want to get it, but I had a redemption for me to play Ultra Kaiju Monster Rancher on stream that I have to buy and put several hours into. So
yeah, that sounds terrible.
Oh, a Monster Rancher game just does not seem interesting to watch on stream.
I don't know. We'll see.
Especially when you can't just pop CDs in to get new monsters.
Right?
It's NFCs now. So you can use your credit card.
No.
You can use your credit card to get...
He said NFC, not NFT.
Oh.
Yeah. It's NFCs now. So, like, I could use my... I don't know if my Starlink stuff will work. It probably will. But, like,
also, using your credit card seems like a terrible fucking idea.
Yeah.
You could use your credit card.
Yeah, maybe don't scan your credit cards into a fucking random PC game.
Yes.
I'm not going to. But, like, you could use, like, your employee ID if it has, like, the NFC in it. Or, any of your amiibos and stuff like that. That's how it works this time. It's not the discs. And it's
what the fuck are you scanning it to?
The Switch.
Oh,
it's a Switch game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a PC game. I'm like, wait,
no.
The fuck are you scanning it to?
No, it's a like I mean I probably should have mentioned it's a Switch game, but yeah, it's a Switch game. So you scan it into your Switch, and you can you unlock different monsters that way. But it's like based on the seed is based on the time of day that you scan the thing. So like each time of day in game, or like the day in game. I don't know. It's weird, but it's
not based on the thing you're scanning.
Well, it is based on the thing you're scanning, but also like it's So it's like there's no true randomness in computers. So each day a seed gets set in game for what can be released within this large plethora of things. And then based on what you scan is a random number based on that seed for that day. So every day in game you can scan your card and potentially get a different monster.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know. I was when I first heard about it, I was super interested. I'm now like kind of losing a little bit of interest because seemingly there is no actual end to this game from what I'm seeing, and it's just play, and it's like kind of like a slice of life type thing because I've never done Monster Rancher. So yeah, I'm gonna do it for at least probably 10 to 20 hours, and then figure out a different game to play.
That sounds valid.
Yeah.
But so Sparks of Hope. It's more Mario plus Rabbids, but they've changed up a little bit. So Rich, I know you played Kingdom Battle. Drew, did you ever try Kingdom Battle?
No, I can't remember if it's ever actually been on sale for a price that I've felt like paying.
It's actually had some pretty good like $10 sales.
I'm pretty sure there's
like
a
10
demo
off
you can
or
actually
down to $10.
Like down to $10 because it's not a Nintendo game technically.
Fair.
It's a Ubisoft game. So it's the only way you can get a game with Mario in it for less than $50.
I'm pretty sure it has a live demo as well that you can download, and if you like it, you can continue your spot from there.
That's true. And like, if you enjoy like the XCOM-y games, like you'd actually probably enjoy Kingdom Battle.
Yeah.
So what they changed with Sparks of Hope is it's no longer grid-based. So you just get your like movement area that gets highlighted in blue, and your character can move anywhere in that. You're not locked to anything. It has like the cover mechanics, so the whole idea is like when you move, before you do an attack, you want to make sure you're either definitely out of range of any possible enemies or hidden behind something where that enemy hopefully can't hit you or can't move into a position where they can hit you. Which, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes like maybe you think like you're behind something and then like there's actually an enemy that was like around the corner you didn't realize that just sort of like steps out in front of you and takes you out.
Yep.
And then on top of just having that blue movement area, you can just swap between like your 3 playable characters on the map, in the middle of the turn. So like you don't have to lock something in before moving to the next character. So you can actually do some strategic maneuvering, they have what's called a team jump, where if you move one character to another character and hit A, the other character will boost the one you're controlling into the air, and you'll do like a slow glide across the map.
Okay.
So if you move both characters to like the edge of what they can both get to, and then do a team jump, you can send another character much further into the level. It works really well for stages where the goal is to just get to a specific spot, versus having to defeat all the enemies. Because usually in those levels, the enemies are significantly sturdier. They have more health. They do more damage because you're not really supposed to take them out. You're just supposed to get to the goal line at the end of the level. So using that mechanic, like you can get there pretty quickly and pretty easily if you think about it as you're going. And then you have a dash attack that doesn't take one of you have 2 actions per turn. Dashing doesn't take one of them, but it does damage to enemies, and in some cases, it knocks the enemies down so that they become throwable. So if there are bombs in a level, you dash attack one, you can then pick it up, throw it, it does a ton of damage to enemies, and will also like destroy cover and stuff like that. If there are Goombas in the level and you dash attack them, you can actually dash attack them when they're in a line and take out groups of them. But if they're wearing helmets, it'll actually knock them over, and you can also use them as like throwable items, or even just throw them off the level entirely because the buckets protect them and you can't attack them otherwise. The little shits. And then the namesake of this game, the Sparks, they are, what are the things from Mario Galaxy called? The collectibles?
The Lumens.
So they're basically a Lumen, crossed with a Rabbid.
Okay.
And each one, they're basically like your elemental power-up sort of equipable item that you collect throughout the game. When you go into certain battles, one of them pop up, you're like, hey, you have to help me get out of here, and then I'll just like hang out with you afterwards. And they usually give you some sort of benefit. Right now I have I have a flame spark, a water spark, and 3 just like various power-ups. Like one of them does, when I use it, I do like 20% more damage to an enemy. And so do my teammates if they're in the like vicinity of it. One of them, enemies take like 20% of damage they inflict on me. And I forget what the third one of those does. But then the flame and the water ones, the flame one sets enemies on fire as long as they're not resistant to it. And then that causes them to like run around and potentially light other enemies on fire. Or if you're dumb and you don't pay attention, potentially run into one of your people, set them on fire, and then they may run into you and set, like they can chain fire to each other.
Oh yeah.
On both sides. The splash one is super cool though, because if you position yourself correctly, it actually makes the enemy get like it does like a knockback effect on them. So if you position yourself right, you can knock enemies just off the stage. And if you use like Peach, for instance, she has like more of like a shotgun blast where like her attack is a cone, and it can hit multiple things in one shot anyway. So if you just have like an area with a bunch of enemies sitting there, you trigger the splash spark, hit them all, and you're potentially just bouncing them all out of the level. Mm-hmm. And it works on like the big enemies. I had one where it was a mini boss in a stage that I had to take out, and he just had a lot of health, and it was one of those where like all my attacks were just doing so little damage to him that it was getting tedious. And he was resistant to flame, but I saw that he was weak to the splash. So I hit him with that, and I thought it was just going to do more damage, and it knocked him off the fucking stage. And I'm like, oh, all right, cool. Well, that's nice. Over then. They also, Rich, I don't know if you remember this, but in the first one, you were locked to certain characters in your party. Like, you had to have Mario in your party.
Yeah.
This game, basically, after you get past the the introductory like missions, you can just pick whoever you want, and the game starts out where you have Mario, Rabbid Mario, Luigi, Rabbid Luigi, Peach, and Rabbid Peach.
Okay.
So you have six characters to choose from. You get a 7th fairly early on that is not a Rabbid. It is a Rabbid character, but not a Rabbid version of a Mario character. Mm-hmm. That. And yeah, you can swap your team on the fly when you're running around the open world portions of it. If you're entering like a fight, you can do it before the fight starts, so you get that like most of those strategy games do, like your Fire Emblems. I'm sure XCOM does it too, where like you get kind of like a top level view of the battle. You can kind of move around, check out who the enemies are, if they have any weaknesses and stuff. And on that screen, you can like change your team out. You can swap people out. You can change what sparks they have. If they have any skill tree points, you can skill tree them up. You can level up your sparks if you have anything to level up. So like you can go into a battle and like find out that like, oh, like this is going to be better for like a sniper like Luigi, and like get Luigi in your party if you don't already have him.
Mm-hmm. XCOM very much does not do that.
Oh, do you not get the like kind of like quick overview of the battle beforehand?
No,
okay,
sir.
I've never played
the
the
most
XCOM.
recent ones. Like maybe one of the super old ones, but like the ones that have come out in the last like 10 years, you barely know. Like you're sending characters out on a battle mission. That's basically it.
Yeah, and XCOM is permadeath for each of your characters. If they die, they're dead.
And it has a very aggressive fog of war. Like if there's a building, you can't see shit behind the building unless there's a window, and then you can see like in the window. But
okay, yeah, I've never played the XCOM games, but that is a pretty common thing in at least the last decade of Fire Emblem. But in Fire Emblem games, usually like when you go into a battle, you're also picking your team like for that specific battle. It's kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics also.
I mean, Tactics has the pick your characters. You do not know what's going to be there.
No, I know. I meant the pick your character portion.
Well, I mean, it doesn't give you a full overview of the map, but it does. Don't you normally see the map
after you pick your characters?
Or at least, is it? Yeah, it is after, isn't it?
Yeah, Tactics,
like you pick. Yeah.
You only see the spaces you can put your character.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you pick your characters, and then when it goes in, that's when you see the enemy. Like that's where the enemy walks onto the level, basically.
Yeah.
But it does start with you picking your characters and like placing them where you want. You don't place these characters because again, it's not grid based, so they just kind of like start either on like one end or in the middle, like depending on like the layout and like the enemies. Everything's level based, and it seems like it might level with you. I'm still on the first world. I played through like the story part of it, where like I can now go to my spaceship and like go to another planet. Because this one is more of like a Mario Galaxy themed one. So you start out in the Mushroom Kingdom, and then shit happens, and you have to take off into space. And you're actually looking for Rosalina because you think something's up with her. Mm-hmm. Like not like she's causing this, but like that she needs help. And you land on a planet, and you do some stuff to help clean that planet up because there's this darkness stuff that's taking over it. It's kind of Mario Sunshine meets I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the other game I want to use. There's basically this black goo stuff all over the place, and when you go up to it, you initiate a battle. You go into the battle, and it's just a generic fight from there with like different types of enemies and different layouts. And then when you clear that battle, the black goo is gone, and it usually opens up like a new area you can travel to in that world. So I'm kind of like clearing out that stuff and doing a lot of the side quests in that first area still right now. I've probably got 5 or 6 hours in so far. I'm like level 10-ish. My team pretty much the whole time has been Luigi, Rabbid Peach, and Peach. Because they're just... Luigi is a sniper, so like he can hit people from far away. And then his like special move, like I guess it's not even really. Yeah, I guess it is a special move. His special move is like Keen Sight or something like that, where when you activate that at the end of your turn, if an enemy moves and crosses your path, like to go from cover to cover, Luigi will snipe him. And then Peach has a defense shield that she'll put up that it will negate damage when an enemy attacks you once during like the enemy turn. So like it will do it to the radius if your team is in there, so you can potentially protect your whole team.
Cool.
I actually I did it during a fight with like another one of those like mini bosses, and actually was it saved Peach because he came over and he was doing 2 attacks, and 2 attacks would have killed her, but it completely negated the first one, and then the second one just, got through it okay. And then right now, Rabbid Peach is a healer, so she can heal my characters up without me having to expand an item to do so, and also heals for more than the items seem to do.
Yeah.
And then they all have their spark ability. They can all use an item. They all have a dash. They all have the team jump ability, and then they each have their weapon. So like I said, Luigi's a sniper. Peach does like the cone attack, and Rabbid Peach has, it's kind of like a homing missile attack where it will fire up and then back down onto an enemy, so it negates cover for them. Even if they're hiding behind like full crate cover, it'll just go up and still hit them 100% of the time.
Cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool ways you can go about fighting in it, because you can leverage the dash on all 3 people and kind of like whittle an enemy down with dashes, and then depending on their positioning, either bring Peach out and kind of hit them with a blast attack and potentially kill all of them very quickly, or use Rabbid Peach to just like pound them from behind the cover they're hiding behind and not potentially expose any of your other characters. But I have to swap in like Rabbid Luigi and Mario at some point. They do make you play with the non-Mario themed Rabbid character at the beginning. That is actually the point at which you get 3 characters for your party. And then as soon as you're done that fight, you can just swap that character out for anyone else. But that character has like a sword, so it's more of it's not melee because they throw the sword, but it's more like it's definitely more close range because it doesn't have the same range as like the ranged weapons do, basically. Mm-hmm. But they were kind of neat. Like I'm gonna mess with them a little bit.
I think that's the one thing that's kind of like a little bit of a bummer with those games. It's only parties of 3, and like I have so many. You get so many characters, and it's like you can only use 3 of them.
But so they level up together. So anytime you get a level up, everybody gets a level up. So everybody gets the same amount of skill points. So you never have that situation where, oh, well, I'm never going to use Mario because he's level 2 and everyone else is level 15. And because you can go into a fight and look at both the layout of the world and what enemies are there, you can make your choices for your team from there. It's just, the first world is easy enough that, like, I haven't had to do that, but I can definitely see situations where having some of these different characters with their different special abilities is going to make an impact on the fight. Like, the last battle I was doing, it's the first time I'm having trouble with a fight. It's a last man standing sort of thing. Like, you just have to survive for 6 rounds. And there's a handful of enemies that can shoot at you, but they're fairly far back, so it takes a turn or two for them to get up to you. But then the rest of the map is just covered in Goombas with the metal helmets, so you can't damage them. The only way to get them out of the game is to dash and then throw them. And Goombas have a pretty good range, and these things, one hit takes out about half of my health. So if one character gets hit twice, they're dead. And I haven't gotten to a point yet where I can revive characters.
I don't think you ever got that in the first one.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. So it's one of those where, like, the first time I did that map, I didn't know that you couldn't damage the Goombas. So I got stomped because I did some goofy stuff, and then I'm like, all right, well, I have these guys lined up now. I'll just hit them with Peach's thing, and they're Goombas. They'll go down easy. And then it does 0 damage to them. I'm like, well, fuck me.
Yeah.
And the second time I did better, but then the game does this thing where it'll spawn portals occasionally. And in most levels, it tells you destroy the portal before enemies spawn. You can't destroy these portals. They're always going to spawn enemies at the end of that turn. And they spawn 2 to 3 enemies per portal. So while you're trying to corral and manage, like, the oncoming army of Goombas, you have 4 to 6 more that spawn at the end of a turn. And they generally spawn, like, right next to you because there's not really a whole lot of places to go. And it's just, it's a bad fucking time. And it was rough. I'm going to go back and play it a few more times and try some other strategies because I was focusing on trying to kind of like secure myself in, like, the main area and just let the enemies kind of slowly come to me so that I could just pick them off each turn. And that was working really well until the portals started spawning.
Sounds like you need to get good at games, Cobb.
Yeah.
Damn.
Man, you know what? I do. But I'm hoping if I play it less safe and actually move into the level instead of trying to, like, just bait the enemies to me, it'll give me a little bit more wiggle room away from where those portals spawn. Because in all the other levels so far, portals have spawned in, like, the same places. They don't seem to follow you. I'm hoping that's the same case here, but since these are different portals that you can't even take out before they spawn enemies, I just don't know. But at least it's, like, there doesn't seem to be a penalty for losing. Like, that's you can good. Just so to be fair, like, I haven't actually lost yet either. If you just hit pause, there's just a restart battle.
Okay.
So I imagine there's no actual penalty for losing because you can just restart the battle before you do. So I've just done that when it's been going poorly because I'm not going to waste time dying just to start it over. I'm just going to fucking start it over.
Yep.
But yeah, it's been delightful so far.
Cool.
As much as I don't like minions, I'm okay with Rabbids and their goofiness.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just for what it's worth, the very first thing you do in the game is actually Rabbid Mario has had his overalls stolen, so he's hiding in a bush. So you have to go find his overalls that have been hidden from him by you find out later on it was Rabbid Luigi that stole them and hid them. Which makes you wonder, how did they get his overalls off of him if he was wearing them? Because he's just naked in a bush right now.
He was sleeping.
But how the fuck did he get the overalls off of him?
Who knows?
It's a rabbit. They sleep heavy.
You don't know.
Just because you don't doesn't mean no one else does.
I agree. Somebody does, but you don't. I mean, you don't even know what your Desert Island movie is.
It's the second inning of the Phillies game. This argument is pointless. Let's move on.
I'm just saying, just because you don't sleep heavy doesn't mean no one else.
So, to be fair, I'm watching the Phillies game as we're talking.
So am I, but I would like to watch the Phillies game.
But yeah, it's actually a super fun game. I'm enjoying it really well. I'm not enjoying this Phillies game all that much, I'm going to be honest with you. They're just, what are they doing, man?
It's early. They got the out. it happens.
Yeah, but they also have a runner on third right now.
Yeah, well, the runner made a good base running play.
I mean, you're right. Like, that runner did make a good play. And honestly, like, the Astros are they're hitting well right now. Like, they're not hitting into the sky. They're hitting, like, nice line drives and shit like that and grounders. Like, good for them.
The PodQuest play-by-play a day after it's aired.
Look, there's somebody that's not going to have watched the game. They're going to have it on, like, their DVR, and we're letting them know the first 2 innings, if you're a Phillies fan, not the best.
I mean,
but
it's still
or they're
0-0.
going to be upset that you spoiled the first 2 innings because they couldn't watch it because they were at work and they weren't going to watch it until later in the day before the next game, and so they avoided the entire day without spoilers. And now you just spoiled the first 2 innings.
I'm also really annoyed. Fucking damn it! Sorry, Nola just hit the batter.
Your thing is ahead of me, so let's just wrap this show up.
Yeah, sorry. Drew, question for you since you are also watching it. Does it slightly bother you that Nola has that weird, like, strap hanging off his glove? Because it bothers me.
I can't say I've noticed, but now I'll probably notice and probably agree.
Like, it's like one of, like, the leather straps from the glove. It's just...
Tie that thing. Man, come on, what are we doing?
Man, calm down. It's fine.
No, he said tie that thing up, not
I'm agreeing with you that he should tie that strap down to... I know, on my gloves, I always had the straps tied as tight as...
Yeah, and I mean, like, I get, like, it's probably just, like, a preference thing, but, like, at that point, if you're not going to tie it, just fucking cut it off. Like, don't have that thing dangling like that. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway, Sparks of Hope was cool. Do either of you guys have anything else you want to talk about?
Nope.
Rich, do you want to drag this on more?
I was trying, but I don't have anything. What do you think they should do with the next Resident Evil?
We just discussed that already. It's going to be Resident Evil 9.
What should they do with it?
I don't know. I haven't played. Yeah, actually, no. Vampires again.
Vampire zombies.
Aren't vampires already zombies?
I don't know.
They're undead.
They're undead, but they have a mind of their own, and they eat on blood and not flesh.
I'm just saying.
You know what? Just regular humans.
That was Resident Evil 5, right?
No, they had, like, some weird...
4 and 5, they had a parasite.
Yeah.
5 did have a parasite?
Human.
4, 5, and 6 all had the parasite.
Okay, for some reason I thought 5 was just, like, cult members or something like that.
No, it was the same... It was an enhanced version of the parasite from 4.
Okay, that's fair then. But yeah, so I guess that is probably going to do it for this week, though.
Yeah.
All right. Next week we'll be doing our book club, which is the history of Tetris, from the Gaming Historian on YouTube. There'll be a link to that in the show notes if you don't want to have to go try and find it. Other than that, though, you can find more of our content at www.one-quest.com. You can also send us... No, sorry, I got distracted by the game. You can also support us by going to patreon.com/onequest. If you can't support us there with your dollars, though, you can go to your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all those places. They're good. They're fun. Rate us, review us, subscribe to us. It all helps a whole bunch.
Yeah.
You can find us on social media, facebook.com/onequestonline or at @1_quest on Twitter and Instagram. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/onequestvideo. And you can always send us emails to social@one-quest.com. And then, Rich, you are back to your normal, like, 3-4 night a week streams?
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday from generally 7 to 10 on the week. Sundays, I've been liking the longer streams, like the noon to 5 or 6, so I might be sticking with that. Just come follow me on socials to find it, and my Twitch is twitch.tv/b_walnuts.
Cool. And with that, we will be back next week with something else to talk about, and hopefully the Phillies will be World Series champions.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Go Phils.
See yous.